Shabbat Shalom. This week, we read the Torah portion called Bahalotecha, which literally means to ascend or to go up. As its root, it also has the word aliyah, which literally means to go up. When one moves to Israel, they make aliyah to Israel. They go up to Israel. When one is called to the Torah for an honor of reading the Torah or reciting the blessings, one has an aliyah, going up to the Torah. The reason this portion is called Bahalotecha, ascending or going up, is that Aaron is given a command by God to go up and light the lights on the menorah that is in the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the portable temple of our ancestors as they wandered throughout the wilderness and the desert on their way to the promised land. So Aaron is instructed to go up on the menorah and light these lights to bring God's light and presence into the midst of the people. Well, I want to share with you another enlightening insight about this Torah portion by the famous 13th century Spanish commentator, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, also called the Ramban or Nachmanides. Nachmanides says there's two major themes in the entire book of Numbers, in this book of Bamidbar. And the first 10 chapters of Bamidbar, the book we're in, talks about and deals mainly with the internal organization of Klal Yisrael, of the people of Israel, the tribes, how they traveled, how they encamped, all about the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, how there were tribes situated to the north, the south, the east, the west, making the tabernacle and the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting, the central focus of our Israelite ancestors as they wandered and made their way to the promised land. The next set of chapters in the book of Numbers deals with the events that happened to our Israelite ancestors as they traveled. The story of the spies that Moses sent into the promised land to spy out the land, to see if it was a good land for our ancestors to conquer and inhabit. So it dealt with the spies. It dealt with the rebellion of Korah, another Levite in the tribe of the Israelites, who also wanted to contend with Moses for the leadership of the people. It deals with the treachery of Balak and Bilam in these second set of chapters in the book of Numbers. So as such, according to Nachmanides, this portion this week serves as a most important function. It bridges these two themes in the book of Numbers, between the life of the people as they were encamped around Mount Sinai and the tabernacle, and their existence as a nation during their years of wandering. As an aspect of this transition, we find a note, according to Nachmanides, as to how the people knew when to travel from one campsite to another. You see, the portion tells us that there was a signal, there was a cloud that represented God's glory that was above the tabernacle. And when that cloud would move, our Israelite ancestors were supposed to pack up their campsite, pack up the tabernacle, and follow the cloud until the cloud stopped. And then our ancestors knew to break out the tabernacle and to make camp once again. So this cloud was not the only signal the people had that it was time to move on. The Torah tells us that Moses was commanded to make trumpets, silver trumpets, from his own possessions. They were used only by Moses, and they were buried along with Moses upon his death. Even his most trusted disciple and his successor, Joshua, could not use them. He used a shofar instead. So, in addition to God's cloud that instructed the people to move on, when it was time to move on, Moses would take his silver trumpet and he would sound a blast from the trumpets. Joshua, his shofar. So this information raises a few questions. Why did our ancestors need a second signal? Why did they need Moses' trumpets and ultimately Joshua sounding the shofar to move on when they could see God's cloud? in God's glory? Why was Joshua given a shofar and not the trumpets that Moses used? Well, this is Nachmanides' insight. Nachmanides tells us that in every generation, we produce our own unique set of leaders. Each leader is charged with the responsibility of guiding that generation in the ways of our tradition, in the ways of Torah. Each leader of Israel relates to the people of his own generation in their own style. Moses did it through the trumpets. Joshua did it through the shofar. Each one of them had their own unique style. And Klal Yisrael, the people of Israel, were the richer for having each one. I share that with all of you and this insight from Ramban, Nachmanides, because we are at a transition in our congregation. For the last 28 years, I have been a rabbi in service in our congregation, the last 8 years as senior rabbi. And now my tenure and my time is coming to an end. End of January, I will retire as senior rabbi. Though I'll be Rabbi Emeritus, the congregation will now be led by Rabbi Keller. So, just as in our Torah portion, Moses had his trumpets and Joshua had his shofar. And Bnei Israel were richer for having each one share their own music, their own qualities with the community. One was not necessarily better than the other. They were different. Just as Rabbi Keller and I are different and our approach may be different in how to lead the congregation and how to officiate, nonetheless, our congregation, Bnei Israel, will be the richer for having these distinct qualities of having had me as a leader, and I followed Rabbi Agler, and now Rabbi Keller. Each of us has our own music, our own instrument, our own way and inevitable style in how to lead and how to teach and how to inspire. And I know that Rabbi Keller's leadership will elevate this congregation, like the word ha'alotecha, like making aliyah, going up. You will be inspired, you will be elevated by his style, by his music that will enrich you and enrich our entire community. So I wish Rabbi Keller well and l'hatzlacha, much success in his new endeavors of leading our congregation, Bnei Israel, forward into the promised land. May he lead us with great wisdom, with great insight, and of course, with his great humor. Shabbat shalom.